I'm 30 years old, and 6 weeks ago, my parents invited me to dinner for the first time in nearly a year. Not because they missed me, not because they wanted to apologize. They invited me because they had printed out an invoice for my entire childhood. 30 pages. Stapled. Highlighted. Signed at the bottom by both of them like it was some kind of legal agreement. Food. School uniforms. Dentist appointments. Birthday gifts. The old piano lessons I begged to quit when I was 9. Every gallon of gas my father claimed he used driving me to school. Every Christmas present they said they sacrificed to buy. At the very end, in bold black ink, was the total. $389,742. That was what my parents said I owed them for raising me. And if that sounds insane, believe me, I thought the same thing. But this story isn't really about that invoice. It's about a grandmother they told me didn't want to see me. A locked room at a hospice center on the coast of Maine. And an old silver voice recorder hidden inside a sewing basket. A recorder that held my grandmother's final words. And the one truth my parents spent years trying to bury. Before I tell you what happened, let me take you back to the beginning. I grew up in a white colonial house in Brookline, Massachusetts. From the outside, it looked perfect. Black shutters. Boxwood hedges. A brass knocker on the front door that my mother polished every Saturday morning. My father, Martin Bennett, owned a small catering company called Bennett and Bloom. My mother, Victoria, managed the books. Together, they built a life that looked respectable from the street. Inside the house, everything had a price. Not just money. Everything. A favor had a price. A mistake had a price. A tear had a price. And love always came with a receipt. My younger brother, Aiden, never paid those prices. Aiden was 4 years younger than me, blonde, charming, and endlessly forgiven. If he failed a class, he was under pressure. If I got a B, I was wasting opportunity. If he wrecked my mother's car, he was young and learning. If I scratched a coffee table moving a chair, I heard about it for 6 months. My grandmother, Eleanor Bennett, was the only person who never made me feel like a burden. She lived 3 hours away in a weathered cottage near Bar Harbor, Maine, with blue trim, wild roses climbing the fence, and a porch that looked out toward the sea. Every summer, she took me in for 2 weeks. Sometimes 3, if my parents were too busy to come get me. Those weeks saved me. Grandma Eleanor taught me how to bake blackberry scones, how to hem a dress by hand, how to read the tide charts, and how to sit quietly without feeling guilty for taking up space. She used to say, "Charlotte, people who truly love you don't keep score." I didn't understand how rare that was until I got older. At home, my parents kept score of everything. When I was 13, I found a folder in my mother's office labeled Charlotte Expenses. I thought maybe it was for taxes. It wasn't. Inside were receipts, handwritten notes, and printed spreadsheets. Charlotte Orthodontist, Charlotte School Trip, Charlotte Winter Coat, Charlotte Piano Repair after emotional outburst. That one was because I had slammed the piano lid after my mother told me I was dramatic like a street actress. I stared at that folder for 10 minutes before putting it back exactly where I found it. When I asked my mother about it later, she didn't even look embarrassed. She said, "One day you'll understand what you cost us, not what they spent. What I cost. Like I was damage. Like I was debt." I left home at 18 with a partial scholarship to Boston University, 2 suitcases, and $620 in a checking account Grandma Eleanor had secretly helped me open. My father stood in the driveway while I loaded the car. He didn't hug me. He didn't say he was proud. He said, "Don't call us when real life gets hard." So I didn't. I worked through college. Coffee shop mornings. Library desk evenings. Freelance design projects at midnight. I graduated exhausted, thin, and proud. By 26, I had a stable job at a branding agency in Boston. Nothing glamorous. A cubicle, client calls, endless revisions on restaurant logos and real estate brochures. But it was mine. I paid my rent. I paid my loans. I paid for groceries, heat, dentist cleanings, winter boots, and the occasional sad desk salad that cost too much. I owed my parents nothing. At least, that's what I thought. Then came the dinner invitation. My mother texted me on a Thursday afternoon. "Family dinner. Sunday at 6. Important." I almost ignored it. But then she sent a second message. "Your grandmother has been asking why you don't make more effort with this family. That got me. Because Grandma Eleanor had become harder to reach. Her phone calls had shortened. Then they stopped. Whenever I asked my parents about her, they said she was tired. Or resting. Or not in the mood to talk. My father told me, "She's old, Charlotte. Stop taking everything personally." So I went to dinner. The house smelled like roast chicken and rosemary, but there was no food on the table. Just a leather binder. My father sat at the head of the dining room table. My mother sat beside him with a glass of white wine. Aiden was there too, leaning back in his chair, scrolling through his phone like he'd been forced to attend a school assembly. "Sit down," my father said. I sat. My mother slid the binder toward me. On the cover, printed in neat black letters, were the words, "Parental Reimbursement Summary, Charlotte Ann Bennett." I actually laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because my brain refused to accept it as real. "What is this?" I asked. My mother folded her hands. "This is a record of what your father and I invested in you." Invested? My father opened the binder to the last page and tapped the total. $389,742. "We're not expecting it all immediately," he said. "We're reasonable people." My mother nodded. "We've calculated a monthly repayment plan. $3,000 a month for the first 5 years, then we can reassess." I looked at Aiden. He didn't look up. I looked back at my parents. "You're charging me for being your child?" My mother's face hardened. "We are asking you to acknowledge sacrifice." "No," I said. "You're asking me to pay an invoice I never agreed to." My father's voice dropped. "You benefited from this family. You don't get to walk away and pretend you made yourself." That was when I asked the question that changed everything. "Does Grandma know about this?" My mother took a sip of wine. "Eleanor agrees with us." My chest tightened. "What?" My father leaned back in his chair. "She thinks you've become selfish. She told us she's disappointed." I don't know why that broke me more than the invoice. Maybe because my parents had called me selfish my whole life. But Grandma Eleanor? The woman who hid chocolate biscuits in a blue tin for me? The woman who mailed me $20 bills and birthday cards even when I was 28? The woman who once drove through a storm because I called her crying from campus? That woman thought I owed my parents $389,742. I left without eating. I drove home through rain, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my hands ached. The second I got inside my apartment, I called my grandmother. Her phone rang, and rang, then cut off. No voicemail. I tried again the next morning. Same thing. Then again. Same thing. For 2 weeks, I called every day. Nothing. When I asked my father where she was, he said, "She's recovering." She doesn't want stress. Recovering from what? "Don't interrogate me," my mother texted. "Your grandmother has made her feelings clear. You need to focus on making things right." Then the family messages started. Aunt Lydia, Uncle Paul, cousins I hadn't seen since weddings and funerals. All of them with the same message dressed in different words. "Your parents gave you everything. You should be grateful. Money is uncomfortable, but family comes first." My mother posted on Facebook too. No names, of course. Just enough poison for everyone to taste. Some adult children forget the sacrifices made for them. Heartbreaking when love is repaid with entitlement. 56 likes. 20 comments. A cousin wrote, "So sorry you're going through this." My mother replied, with a broken heart emoji. I stopped checking Facebook after that. But I couldn't stop thinking about Grandma Eleanor. One Saturday morning I drove to Maine. I didn't tell anyone. 3 hours north, past pine forests and gray water, past roadside diners and antique shops with hand-painted signs. When I reached her cottage, the curtains were drawn. Her wind chimes were gone. The porch chairs had been stacked in the corner. I knocked. Nothing. I tried the side door. Locked. I walked around back and saw the garden beds overgrown with weeds. Grandma never let weeds take the tomatoes. Never. A neighbor, Mrs. Whitcomb, saw me from across the lane and came over in a red raincoat. "Charlotte?" "Yes." "Hi. I'm looking for my grandmother." Her face changed. "Oh, sweetheart. I thought you knew." My stomach dropped. "Knew what?" "They moved her to Harbor Light Hospice almost 3 weeks ago." I stared at her. "Hospice, Mrs. Whitcomb touched my arm. "Your father said the family wanted privacy. He said you were not involved. Not involved." That was how my father described me while my grandmother was dying. I drove straight to Harbor Light. The building sat on a hill above the water, all pale stone and wide windows, trying very hard not to look like a place where people went to die. Inside, the lobby smelled like lavender and disinfectant. A woman at the front desk asked for my name. Charlotte Bennett, I said. I'm here to see Eleanor Bennett. I'm her granddaughter, she typed. Then stopped. I'm sorry, she said carefully. You're not on the approved visitor list. There must be a mistake. She looked genuinely sorry. Only Martin Bennett, Victoria Bennett, and Aidan Bennett are approved. My ears started ringing. Can you call her room? Please. Just tell her I'm here. I'm not allowed to do that. She's my grandmother. I understand. No, I said, my voice breaking. You don't. I stepped away from the desk before I started shouting at the wrong person. I sat in my car in the parking lot and called my father. He answered on the second ring. Where is Grandma? Silence. Dad. His voice was cold. You had no right going there. She's in hospice. She doesn't need drama. I'm not drama. I'm her granddaughter. You're not on the list for a reason. I closed my eyes. What did you tell her? He hung up. I sat there until the sky turned dark over the water. At 9:17 that night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Is this Charlotte Bennett? Yes. My name is Nora Blake. I'm a night nurse at Harbor Light. I sat up. Is my grandmother okay? There was a pause. She's weak, but she's awake. And she has been asking for you every day. I covered my mouth. Every day? Yes. She thinks you don't want to come. My body went cold. Nora's voice softened. Your father told her you were too angry to visit. I don't remember what I said after that. Maybe nothing. Maybe I just cried. Nora told me to come back at 10:30 p.m. and use the side entrance near the staff parking lot. So I did. I drove back in the dark. Nora met me at the door in navy scrubs, silver hair tied into a bun, a badge clipped to her pocket. She didn't ask questions. She just led me through a quiet hallway, past supply carts and closed doors, until we reached room 18. Before she opened it, she looked at me. She doesn't have much time, she said. But she has been waiting. My grandmother looked smaller than I had ever seen her. She had always been soft and sturdy, with strong hands and bright eyes. Now she looked like paper folded too many times. An oxygen tube rested beneath her nose. Her hair was thin and white against the pillow. But when her eyes opened and saw me, she smiled. Not a polite smile. Not a weak smile. My grandmother's smile. Oh, my girl, she whispered. I rushed to her side and took her hand. I'm sorry, I said. I didn't know. They didn't tell me. Grandma, I swear I didn't know. A tear slipped down her cheek. I knew they were lying. My throat closed. She squeezed my hand with almost no strength. Listen carefully, Charlotte. I don't have long. Don't say that. I need you to be brave enough to hear me. I nodded, crying silently. She pointed toward a chair in the corner. My sewing basket. I grabbed it and brought it to the bed. It was the same basket she'd had since I was a child. Wicker, lined with faded blue fabric, filled with thread, needles, buttons, scraps of ribbon. Bottom panel, she whispered. I lifted the fabric lining. Underneath was a flat silver voice recorder, an envelope, and a business card. I looked at her. What is this? Protection. For who? For you. Her breathing hitched. Your father thinks the old will still matters. It doesn't. I changed everything last year. I shook my head, confused. What do you mean? The cottage. The accounts. The shop building in town. All of it. She swallowed with effort. All of it goes to you. I couldn't speak. She looked at me with sudden fierceness. Not because of money. Because you loved me without wanting anything. I broke then. I put my forehead against her hand and sobbed like a child. She ran her thumb once over my knuckles. Then she whispered, play the recorder when you leave. Call the man on the card. Do not warn your father. I stayed with her for 2 hours. I told her about my job. My apartment. The basil plant I kept killing on my windowsill. I told her I still made her scones, but mine never rose right. She smiled and said, too much handling. Dough likes a gentle hand. Near midnight, Nora came in and told me she needed to rest. Before I left, Grandma Eleanor held my hand one more time. You never owed them for love, Charlotte. Those were the last words she ever said to me in person. In the hallway, I sat on a bench and opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in her handwriting. My dearest Charlotte, if you are reading this, Your father has likely tried to turn my silence into a weapon. Believe me when I say this. I never agreed with him. I never believed you owed your parents money. I never thought you were selfish. Your father has been using my accounts without permission. Your mother knows. I have proof. I have placed everything with Mr. Graham Caldwell, my solicitor. You are not alone. You are not a burden. You never were. All my love, Grandma. My hands were shaking when I picked up the recorder. There were 3 files. I pressed play on the first. My father's voice filled the hallway. She'll pay if Eleanor cuts her off. Charlotte is sentimental. Make her believe Grandma's disappointed, and she'll panic. Then my mother. 3,000 a month would fix the tax issue by spring. My father again. And if she refuses? My mother laughed softly. Then we tell the family she abandoned a dying woman. No one will take her side after that. I stopped the recording. For a moment I couldn't breathe. The second file was my grandmother's voice. Weak, but clear. Charlotte, my darling. Your parents have confused parenthood with ownership. They have confused money with love. I am so sorry they made you carry that. I have changed my estate documents. Graham has everything. The cottage is yours. The building on Water Street is yours. The savings are yours. Your father knows nothing. Keep it that way until Graham speaks. There was a pause. Then she added, and if Martin tries to tell you I was confused, remember this. I knew exactly what I was doing. The third file was worse. My father again. The power of attorney expired, but the bank hasn't noticed. I moved 42,000 last quarter. Another 30 should cover payroll. My mother asked, what about Aiden's business loan? We'll call it care expenses. Eleanor doesn't check statements anymore. I sat there, holding that recorder like it was burning my palm. My parents hadn't just lied. They had stolen from a dying woman. And then they tried to make me pay for it. Grandma Eleanor died 3 days later. Nora called me at 5:36 inches the morning. She said it was peaceful. She said the window had been cracked open and the room smelled faintly of salt air. My father called at noon. Your grandmother passed, he said. I know. Silence. How? I didn't answer. He cleared his throat. Funeral is Friday. Don't make this about you, I almost laughed. Because for the first time in my life, I knew something he didn't. And that knowledge felt like standing behind a locked door with the only key in my hand. The funeral was held at a small stone church near the harbor. It rained all morning. Not dramatic rain. Just steady, gray Maine rain that made everything shine. My father stood near the casket, shaking hands like a politician. My mother wore black pearls and dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Aiden looked uncomfortable in a navy suit that didn't fit right. I sat in the third row by myself. No one joined me. After the service, everyone gathered at the village inn for tea, sandwiches, and polite grief. I stood by the window, watching boats rock in the harbor. That was when my mother approached. Charlotte, she said softly. I turned. She had that expression she used when she wanted witnesses. Sad eyes. Gentle mouth. A performance of injury. I hope today reminded you what family means. I said nothing. My father joined her with a glass of whiskey in his hand. This has gone far enough, he said. The reimbursement plan needs to begin next month. I stared at him. At Grandma's funeral reception, his jaw tightened. This family is in a difficult financial position. My mother lowered her voice just enough for nearby relatives to hear. We raised you. We fed you. We gave you a life. And when we ask for basic gratitude, you act like strangers. Aunt Lydia turned toward us. So did Uncle Paul. My father noticed the attention and leaned into it. Eleanor was heartbroken by your selfishness. That was the moment something inside me went still. Not numb. Still. Clear. I looked at him and said, don't speak for her. My mother's lips trembled. She told us everything. No, I said. You told her I didn't care enough to come. The room quieted. My father's face changed. Only for half a second. But I saw it. Fear. What are you talking about? He asked. I picked up my coat from the back of a chair. You'll hear from Grandma's solicitor on Monday. My mother blinked. Solicitor? Yes, I said. Graham Caldwell. My father went pale. Not white. Gray. Like all the blood had been pulled from his face at once. I walked out before either of them could recover. By the time I reached my car, my phone was buzzing. Dad. Mom. Dad. Mum. Aiden. Dad. Mum. I turned it off and drove back to Boston in silence. Monday arrived the way all feared days do. Slowly. Then all at once. Graham Caldwell's office was above a bookshop in Bar Harbor. Old wooden stairs. Brass nameplate. A waiting room with a ticking clock and framed maps on the walls. My parents were already there when I arrived. My father wore a charcoal suit and the expression of a man preparing for battle. My mother sat straight-backed beside him, gripping her handbag. Aiden was in the corner, pale and confused. Aunt Lydia and Uncle Paul had been asked to attend as witnesses. Graham Caldwell was in his late 60s, tall, narrow, and calm in the way only very expensive lawyers seem to be calm. He placed a folder on the table. "Thank you all for coming," my father interrupted immediately. "Before we begin, I want to make it clear that my mother was extremely ill. Any changes made recently are questionable." Graham looked over his glasses. "Mrs. Eleanor Bennett anticipated that concern." My mother shifted in her seat. Graham opened the folder. 18 months ago, Mrs. Bennett created the Eleanor May Bennett Revocable Trust. It was signed in this office, witnessed by 2 independent parties, notarized, and accompanied by a capacity evaluation from Dr. Helen Morris, confirming full cognitive competence. My father's mouth tightened. Graham continued. "The trust supersedes all prior wills and beneficiary designations." "That's impossible," my father snapped. "I'm her son." "Yes," Graham said. "You are." He turned a page. "But you are not the beneficiary." No one moved. Graham read slowly. "The cottage at 14 Rosehaven Lane, the commercial property at 22 Water Street, all personal belongings, and all remaining financial accounts are to pass solely to my granddaughter, Charlotte Ann Bennett." My mother gasped. Aiden looked at me. My father stood. "She would never do that." Graham remained seated. "She did. She was manipulated." "By whom?" My father pointed at me. "By her." I laughed once under my breath. Not because it was funny. Because it was pathetic. Graham opened a second folder. "Mrs. Bennett also requested that certain recordings be preserved and played if her intentions were challenged." My father froze. My mother whispered, "Martin." Graham looked around the room. "Does anyone object to hearing them?" My father said nothing. Uncle Paul leaned forward. "Play them." Graham pressed a button on his laptop. My father's voice filled the office. "She'll pay if Eleanor cuts her off. Charlotte is sentimental. Make her believe Grandma is disappointed and she'll panic." My mother's voice followed. $3,000 a month would fix the tax issue by spring." Then my father again. "And if she refuses?" My mother laughed. "Then we tell the family she abandoned a dying woman. No one will take her side after that." The recording ended. No one spoke. Aiden looked like he might be sick. Aunt Lydia covered her mouth. Uncle Paul stared at my father as if seeing him for the first time. Graham opened the third folder. "There is more. Mrs. Bennett provided bank statements and correspondence indicating that Mr. Martin Bennett used an expired power of attorney to withdraw funds from her accounts after the authority had lapsed." My father exploded. "That money was for her care." Graham slid a document across the table. $78,000 was transferred to Bennett and Bloom Catering. $15,000 to a business account connected to Aiden Bennett. $12,000 to a personal credit card in Victoria Bennett's name. Aiden stood so quickly his chair scraped the floor. "What?" My mother turned to him. "Aiden, sit down. You used Grandma's money for my company? It was complicated," my father said. Aiden looked at me. I didn't know. I believed him. That was the sad part. He really didn't know. Graham folded his hands. "Mrs. Bennett chose not to report the matter while she was alive. She hoped her son might confess. He did not." My father sat down slowly. For the first time in my life, he looked smaller than me. Graham turned to me. "Miss Bennett, the decision to pursue civil or criminal action belongs to you as trustee and beneficiary." Everyone looked at me. My mother's eyes filled with tears now. Real ones, maybe. Or maybe she had simply run out of better options. "Charlotte," she whispered. "Please. We're your parents." I looked at her for a long moment. Then at my father. For 30 years, I had waited for one of them to say they were sorry. Not sorry they got caught. Not sorry life was hard. Sorry for making me feel like every breath I took came out of their account. Neither of them said it. So I said, "I'm not pressing charges today." My mother sagged with relief. My father exhaled. I held up one hand. But Graham will keep the file. If either of you contacts me directly, harasses me, contests the trust in bad faith, or continues telling lies about me, the file goes to the district attorney. My father's face twisted. You destroy your own family? I stood. No. I'm just done letting you destroy me. The weeks after that were strangely quiet. Not peaceful at first. Just quiet. My parents tried calling for 3 days. Then Graham sent a certified letter. All communication must go through this office. The calls stopped. Then the consequences began. The bank opened a review. Bennett and Bloom lost 2 major clients after rumors spread through Brookline. My mother deleted her Facebook post. Then her entire account. Aiden called me 2 weeks later. I almost didn't answer. But I did. His voice was rough. I didn't know about the money. I know. I should have known about other things, though. I sat on the floor of my apartment with my back against the kitchen cabinets. What do you mean? The way they treated you, he said. I saw it. I just liked being the one they didn't treat that way. That was the first honest thing my brother had ever said to me. I'm sorry, Shar. I closed my eyes. Thank you. I'm moving out, he said. I can't stay there. Good. He laughed once, but it broke in the middle. Do you hate me? No, I said. But I don't trust you yet. That's fair. And for once, it was. In April, I drove back to Rosehaven Lane as the legal owner of my grandmother's cottage. The key stuck in the lock the way it always had. The house smelled faintly of dust, lavender soap, and the sea. Everything was exactly as she left it. Her teacups in the cupboard. Her knitting basket by the chair. Her tide chart pinned near the back door. I walked from room to room slowly, touching things like they might disappear. In the sewing room, I found a blue biscuit tin on the shelf. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Me at 6, missing my front teeth. Me at 8, asleep on Grandma's couch with a book on my chest. Me at 12, standing on the beach in an oversized sweater. Me and Grandma making scones, flour on both our faces. And beneath the photos, a note. My Charlotte, I kept every picture because every version of you deserved to be remembered. Don't let anyone convince you that being loved made you expensive. Love was the easiest thing I ever gave you. I sat on the floor and cried for a long time. But it wasn't the same kind of crying. It didn't feel like breaking. It felt like something frozen finally melting. By summer, I had made a life between Boston and Maine. I kept my job. I worked remotely on Fridays. I leased the shop building on Water Street to a woman opening a small bookstore cafe. I repainted the cottage kitchen pale yellow because Grandma always said the room wanted sunshine. I planted rosemary, lavender, and tomatoes in the garden. The tomatoes grew badly. I could almost hear Grandma laughing. My parents sent one letter in June. 4 pages. My father wrote most of it. He said they were under pressure. He said the business was failing. He said parents make mistakes. He said families should not be divided over money. He used the word family 14 times. He used the word sorry once. But only in this sentence. We are sorry you feel the need to punish us. I put the letter back in the envelope and placed it in a drawer. I didn't reply. Sometimes people think boundaries are dramatic. They imagine screaming. Block numbers. Doors slammed. Final speeches in the rain. But sometimes a boundary is just silence after a lifetime of explaining. Sometimes it is letting a call go unanswered. Sometimes it is reading a letter and choosing not to bleed all over it. That was what I chose. I didn't ruin my family. I stopped paying for a place in it. Now, I'm sitting on the porch of Rosehaven Cottage as I tell you this. The sun is going down behind the pines. The ocean is turning silver. There's a mug of tea beside me, gone cold because I keep forgetting to drink it. The silver voice recorder is on the table. I don't need it anymore. Graham has copies. The legal papers are secure. The truth has done what truth does. It found air. But sometimes, at night, when the house is quiet and the wind moves through the wild roses, I press play. And I hear my grandmother's voice. You never owed them for love, Charlotte. I used to think being loved meant proving I was worth the cost. I used to think gratitude meant letting people hurt me because they once fed me, housed me, drove me to school, signed permission slips, bought winter coats, and called it sacrifice. But children don't choose to be born. Children don't sign contracts in cradles. A roof over your head is not a loan. Dinner on the table is not a debt. A parent's responsibility is not an invoice waiting to mature. My parents tried to charge me for my childhood. My grandmother gave me back my life. And maybe you know what that feels like. Maybe no one ever handed you a 30-page invoice. Maybe yours was invisible. Maybe your family said you owed them silence, or loyalty, or obedience, or your paycheck, or your dreams. Maybe they reminded you of everything they did for you until you forgot to ask whether love is supposed to sound like a threat. It isn't. Real love doesn't keep a ledger. Real love doesn't use illness as bait. Real love doesn't lock the door and tell you the person inside stopped caring. Real love saves the photos. Real love hides the proof where you'll find it. Real love says, you were never a burden, and means it. I don't know if my parents will ever truly apologize. Maybe one day my father will call Graham's office and leave a message that begins with the right words. Maybe my mother will write a letter that doesn't defend, explain, or accuse. Maybe. But I'm not waiting for that day to begin my life. I already began it. Here. On this porch. With cold tea. Bad tomatoes. Wild roses. And the sound of my grandmother's voice reminding me that I was loved without a price tag. So if you are carrying a debt you never agreed to, put it down. If someone handed you guilt and called it gratitude, hand it back. If they made you feel expensive just for existing, please hear me clearly. You do not owe anyone payment for surviving your childhood. You do not owe anyone your peace because they once performed their duty. You do not owe your life to people who only loved you when you were useful. Walk away from the table. Leave the invoice unsigned. Love was never supposed to come with a balance due.